Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rugby Through the Leagues podcast. This week, we did try to get Anthony Watson on, but we've had to settle for Huw Griffin, who seems to be on pretty much every rugby podcast as well, another friend of the ATR family. And we want to do a line special. I've kind of kept this all in the dark from Huw as well, so we're kind of going to go with the flow and everything like that. But Huw's got plenty of knowledge of what we've got coming up. And yeah, Huw, really appreciate you coming on, mate.
My pleasure, mate. My pleasure. Yes, as you say, I am the rugby equivalent of sand. I get everywhere. And I am on too many pods. But listeners and viewers, you are most blessed to be hosted today by the guest on my show that is the most viewed podcast on my YouTube channel, and by a lot. 13,000 views for the growth of Spanish rugby. Blew my mind, mate. I was emotionally prepared for no views on that. I was like,
so was I, mate.
This is interesting, but I don't know if anyone's going to watch it. And it's the most watched bloody thing I've ever done.
Perfect, mate. No, I really appreciate your time for letting me come on that as well. It was a really good one. Really enjoyed that one, mate. And, well, by the sounds of it, so did the viewers. So hopefully we can return the favour with this one as well. But, right, the Lions tour. There was a few changes, a few shocks potentially on the lead up, weren't there? So obviously, Caelan Doris, who was my bolt-on captain, got injured in the lead up with Maro Itoje stepping in. I think that's actually going to be a benefit to the Lions, personally. What about yourself?
Yes, I agree. I think Caelan Doris was nailed on. I think once Caelan Doris got injured, Maro Itoje was the obvious one. I don't know about you. I get the feeling with Maro Itoje that he could be a bigger star than he currently is. I think he could be bigger than rugby. If you look at what we've seen in other sports people transcend their sport. I think Maro Itoje could do that. And, we've seen he's not afraid of getting political, and he's not afraid of being an activist and things. But he seems to still be a little bit within himself. Now, if that's him and he's just decided, I don't want to be the guy who's getting pelters in the press every other day, that's fine. Can't argue with that. I think I don't know whether he's still signed to Rock Nation or whatever it is, but I think if he decided he wanted to, he could be the biggest name in rugby. So it is a shame, Caelan Doris, because even if you weren't going to make him captain, I still think he would, he's clearly would have been the number 8 based on the squad that we've seen. But Maro it was easy that you couldn't get it wrong because there was such an obvious choice as number 2.
I think after the performance he put in for the Six Nations for England as well, that transcended him into that position. And I think we're actually probably going to go into a better place with Itoje on the rise that he's had than the potentially the way Ireland was slipping off a little bit. I don't know if it's timed perfectly for Itoje to step up. I don't think he's that character that as you said, I don't think he's the one that wants to put his head above the parapet on certain aspects. He's just got married recently as well by the looks of it, according to OK Magazine or whatever it seems to be all over. But I think he's a bit of an introvert, but a very intelligent man alongside an exceptional rugby player who had a really dodgy blip within his career, which could have gone one way or the other. I think there was a real lull in his impact on the game, shall we say? Not his talent, but his impact on the game. Sort of questioned a few people, saying, "Is he as good as everyone's banging on about?" And then this Six Nations really pushed him forward. And then I think the Lions tour's gonna, as long as he doesn't get injured, I think he could come out of this smelling of roses pretty well. To be fair.
Massively. I think he played every minute of every game for England in 2024. And Steve Borthwick said the reason that he took the captaincy off Jamie George and gave it to Maro Itoje is because he wanted his captain on for 80 minutes. So, and you'd think that it's going to be the case for Andy Farrell. If you're a 4-lock going on this Lions tour, you're going to be playing midweek rugby, I'm afraid, mate.
Yeah. I don't know why Jamie George ever got the captaincy at that time as well. I think that was crying out for a younger captain. So I'm glad Borthwick did sort of reset that at the right time. And I think that probably helped England move forward a little bit.
I wrote a piece about Jamie George, and I think he was one of the most impactful captains that we've ever seen in the Northern Hemisphere because of how much off the pitch he got involved in.
Yeah.
On the like administration side, and he obviously seems a very influential and popular character. But I just wonder whether the dressing room it was getting a bit. This town's not big enough for the both of us between him and Borthwick.
Yeah, you can't have an admin captain when you're losing games consistently, or not getting the results that you should be as well. That's for sure. So I think it was time, and he's still around. But I think time for a Toji to shine, mate. And unlucky for Doris, but looks like it could benefit English rugby as well. And obviously we get to talk about the impacts of Jack Morgan in a little bit as well, because I think this is going to be one hell of a tour for him coming forward. So the tour starts in Dublin on the 20th of June against Argentina. We've then got a trip to Perth against Western Force, the Queensland's Reds in Brisbane on the 2nd of July, New South Wales Waratahs in Sydney on the 5th. We've then got the Brumbies on the 9th in Canberra. 12th of July, we've got an invitational AU and NZ at the Adelaide Oval. Then the first test drops in on the 19th of July in Brisbane. We've then got the First Nations and Pacifica on the midweek Bin Juice Tour on the 22nd of July at the Docklands Stadium in Melbourne. Second tour game on the 26th of July in the Melbourne MCG. Then we finish it up on the 2nd of August in Stadium Australia in Sydney. Some pretty decent stadiums to throw in the mix there to start with as well, because like the MCG and obviously even Aviva and everything like that as well. That's a pretty decent list there just for fans to get around if you got tickets to all of them.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a hell of an expedition, you know. I think sometimes we forget in Britain is that we live in a very small country and we've got a warped perception of what's far away. Like if it's like 40 minutes down the road, you go, I'm not doing that. I'm giving up a whole day to go there. Whereas in Australia, it's like 2-hour flight to your local supermarket.
Yeah.
So so if you have got tickets to go to the whole thing, fair play to you, because that's some investment that you've put into that. But I think the big one that's going to stand out is 100,000 people at the cricket ground. That's going to be a spectacle one way or another.
Well, like even just watching the Boxing Day test in cricket at the MCG and stuff like that is phenomenal. And to put under 1,000 Lions and Aussie fans in a melting pot in the middle of the test, it could have gone one way or the other for the first one. Could win it, could lose it. Who knows as well. It's a pretty crucial game to put in such a spectacle of a place. I actually looked at going and taking the missus and the kids and doing the full tour, and it was up for I think it was going to cost 25 grand for the four of us.
Flipping heck.
I was just like, the wife was like, so where are we going? I was like, well, basically the whole of Australia. She's like, we're not doing that for 25 grand, darling.
That's the thing as well, because with Perth, with Western Force, you got like that over here and then everything else over there.
Yeah. And there's like, 3 or 4 days in between to try and get like halfway across the world effectively.
Yeah, exactly. It's so fun. I don't know. Have you ever been to Australia?
I haven't, no, but my wife has, and she said it's pretty fucking big.
You're on the plane and you've got the map of the globe and the plane going across it, and the plane depending on where you're going. So I went to Brisbane, and the plane gets to the edge of Australia, and you think, oh, we're nearly there. No, you're not nearly there. Apparently, that's a bit what it's like driving to Miami as well. You go over the Florida border and you go, oh, we're nearly there. No, you're not nearly there.
Brilliant. Yeah, I thought it was bad enough driving from Spain back to England. It's like 18 hours. But
did you hear that about Manu Tuilagi when he moved to Bayonne? He drove from Manchester to Bayonne.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty standard. Carl Sinclair did it when he moved from Bristol to Toulon as well. Because like it's just impossible to, like, if you go to Bayonne, there's the nearest airport's Bordeaux, and like you can't get a flight from most places to Bordeaux, and then you'd have to get a hire car, you'd have to move all your stuff, and It's just easier to load your car up and just drive. The French motorways are so easy. Just put your foot down, crack on. Next thing you know, there's a service station every sort of 10 kilometres. Yeah, it's easy driving in France, to be fair. So, yeah, just takes fucking forever.
Fair play.
So, yeah, right. So we've got some amazing places to go on the tour. The bin juice games, obviously, we've got the Western Force, the Reds, the Waratahs, Brumbies, the Invitational side, and then the First Nations and Pacifica. What do you reckon is going to trip us up there? Obviously, Argentina beforehand is going to be a good game either way, but he's not going to pick the first team, is he? He'll have a good mix. He's not going to put anyone at risk of injury. Imagine that Toji injured in the first game.
Well, that's what happened to Alwyn Jones against Japan last time. Jeez, but he came back amazingly. I think that Argentina game is sticky. I think it's very sticky. Argentina have got a habit of starting well. They've gone to New Zealand and beaten the All Blacks first test of the year before now. And they'll be up for it. Obviously, there's a bit of history there. I think it was 2005 Cardiff. Argentina beat the Lions, and it was a very squeaky game. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that one go west. Argentina are a lot better than Japan, which is who the Lions played last time. Yeah. On the actual tour, that invitational team is interesting because the Australia New Zealand one, because the rumours are that it's going to be players who are playing in Japan. So you're talking Richie Mwanga, come on down. Yeah. You know, Brody Retallick,
Michael Hooper captain, apparently, stuff like that.
Aaron Smuth. So that could be better than the Wallabies. So that's interesting, and that being a week before the test. I think you said that's scary. That could go wrong. Because what do? Do you go right? This is basically a bars game. I can't do any prep on this opposition whatsoever. We don't know what the levels could be like. It could be like 15 hungover blokes. It could be the best team you've ever seen. So do I just put a midweek team out for it, or do I need to get some warmth into my first team? Yeah. So you don't know. And then the one that I just don't know is the Pacifica First Nation as one. Because that's the one that's in to replace the Rebels, who obviously are no longer with us. Yeah. And I just don't know who's going to play for that team. What's it going to look like? Is it just going to be Fiji? I've got no idea. Yeah. Who have they got in charge of that one? I know that Tana Umanga is the assistant coach. I can't remember who's fully in charge. It's a former Wallabies forward and Tonga head coach, Tutuai Kefu, was named head coach on the 26th. Then you've got Glenn Ella, Sekope Kepu, Simon Rawali, and then Raya Louis, and then Tana Umanga. So they've got a decent coaching setup, but as you say, who's going to get picked is if it's a mix of Fijian Drua and Moana Pacifica, that's fun. But I don't want to get too much into the history of Australia, mostly because I don't know very much about it. But I understand
very true. Yeah,
what we in Britain might have a preconception of an Aboriginal or a First Nation person would be. I'm very sorry, I don't know the exact correct jargon. Yeah, might not be totally true. Someone might tell you that they are a First Nation person, and you think, "Oh, I didn't think that you would be," in things for historical reasons. So, so I've that's a very long-winded saying of I've got absolutely no idea what to expect from that. Not a clue. Yeah, I agree. Ian Foster's also been announced in the AUNZ Invitational coaching setup as well. Don't need to worry about him. He's rubbish. Exactly. So it looks like we've won that one already. So the Brumbies, job done. Waratahs. It should be a fairly straightforward bin juice tour, to be fair, but the expectation needs to be 100% win record. I know in 2013 the Lions lost to the Brumbies in the midweek game between the first and second test. Mm-hmm. That's when Shane Williams played in that game. Stuart Hogg at 10. But the expectation needs to be winning every game for sure. Yeah. I think they won every I don't know whether you call it provincial franchise game in South Africa. I think it was about 50-50 in New Zealand, to be fair.
Yeah.
And then last time in Australia, which is the kind of the tour I remember the best, ironically, is I just remember Lee Halfpenny just kicking absolutely everyone off the park. I think against the Waratahs, he got 11 out of 11 conversions in a game.
Yeah, he weren't bad with a boot, was he?
No.
Shame his legs didn't stay fully working all the time.
He had two career-ending knee injuries.
He'd probably still do a job for Wales at the minute, though, mate. So
well, he's just been appointed as kicking coach for Wales, actually.
There we go. The saviour's back. But so I think it's time to probably get on to the squad before we look at who's going to be the starters. We'll deal with the most important anyway. The front row. They're the most important players that we've got. So Luke Cowan-Dickie, Ronan Kelleher, and Dan Sheenan have gone as the three hookers. Surprised with Cowan-Dickie as me, or
yeah, absolutely surprised with Cowan-Dickie. Absolutely surprised with Cowan-Dickie. So Dan Sheenan, everyone expected. I think Ronan Kelleher, you can argue, is he really best three hookers in Britain and Ireland? You can have a debate there, but I don't think any Irish player would have been a surprise. Because it's the Ireland head coach. Ireland have been the top team for how many years now. So I don't think that's a surprise. Cowan-Dickie was a surprise. I had Jamie George down as going because he's an experienced lion. But you forget that Cowan-Dickie is also an experienced lion. Was down in South Africa last time out, as was Kelleher, actually. And all I could find the logic for that is because I read something in, I think it was the Telegraph or something. They're saying that since he'd had a shoulder injury or an arm injury of some kind, and they're saying his throwing wasn't what it used to be. But then I looked at the stats, and Sale have got one of the best lineouts in the world, percentage success wise. So I'm like, okay, cool. So there's that, and Sale get a lot of maul tries now, which means he's dialing it down. But obviously, it's not just because of him, but he is part of a successful system. But then the argument against that is they haven't picked any Sale locks. So how much credit are you giving him, really? Because whenever a lineout goes wrong, we always hear the commentator always says, well, everyone blames the hooker, but it's not the hooker's fault. Yeah, but it's not all the hooker's credit when it goes right either. So that's an apparently scrummaging is very good, but I think a trend that we'll see with a few players through this squad is that we've seen both now Andy Farrell and Warren Gatland pick players who we didn't think were in particularly good form on two different Lions tours now. So clearly there's some kind of thing that a few of these players bring that we as an audience can't see, and Luke Cowan-Dickie seems to be one of those players.
Only thing that I can probably call out on that is his willingness to just put his head and his tackle wherever it needs to be. Like, he's been well renowned for just diving at shins and knees and anything. Like, I think Theo Dan would have probably been the next closest call up for me if he'd got more game time, but he seems to be out of favour in the England squad as well at the minute. He can't seem to get past Jamie George. Same issue that Jamie George couldn't get past Dylan Hartley at times as well. So it was a Scottish hooker.
No one really. I think Dave Cherry is the main one, but I think
Ashman.
Or Ashman, yeah. I think hooker is a problem position for Scotland, though.
Would you not have taken Ashman over Dickie? I think
I would have taken Dewi Lake and Welsh bias maybe, but he's a fantastic ball carrier, and his line out darts are pretty good as well. And he's a big bloke. And we'll come on to this when we talk about another player in a minute. But he walked past me once. I was in the stands in Gloucester, and it was Gloucester versus Ospreys. Ospreys lost, and he walked past me because he was injured at the time up the stairs, and there'd been people going past me all the time. And then I just felt the stand just go and start shaking. And I looked down, it was Dewi Lake coming up, and I was like, Jesus, he's a mighty bloke. Yeah.
I think if Wales hadn't been on the form that they were in, he'd have probably gone as well. He was, I do rate him as a hooker, and Wales had that formidable maul rolling maul at one point as well when they got that
Yeah.
fire in. He was at the back of it, and it was pretty much a bob on, ready for a try, but form again has probably hampered his inclusion. So we now move on to the props, the most important on the pitch. So we've got Xander Fagerson, Tide Furlong, Ellis Genge, Andrew Porter, Pierre Schumann, and Will Stewart. I've got a group chat, and I've got one of the lads that's on part of the pod, and Will Stewart is every time he's on the team sheet, he's shouting blue murder, but he didn't have a decent Six Nations that potentially put him back in a mix here.
England statistically the best scrum in the Six Nations. Between them and France, depending on whether you want to whether you want to restart play or you want to win penalties, it's one of those two.
Yeah.
But either way, England's scrum is good. So I think Genge and Stewart both go in, and I expect them both to be in the matchday 23 one way or another. Pausing only to say that I was enthusiastically educated, shall we say, by a South African lately that it's Schoeman, not Schumann. Schoeman. So I didn't know that either. So the thing for me is definitely another tight head prop is getting called up. Definitely another one, because Fagerson currently injured. Furlong, the day ends in a Y, so he's injured.
Yeah.
So with those two being an injury doubt, definitely another one's been called up. Now, Finlay Beelam's been named in the Ireland squad today. I expect it to be him. If it was me selecting the squad, I'd have taken Beelam over Furlong, because Furlong, Furlong is one of those players who, when people think of him, they think of him in 2022.
Yeah.
We're not in 2022 anymore. And I don't think he's been in great form for a while, and he's just perpetually injured at the moment. So if you're nursing an injured player, and then that only leaves Xander Fagerson's injured as well. Yeah. So if you're nursing an injured one, and then you're going on tour with 1.5 fit ones, and then you're playing a game every 3 or 4 days, that equals you need to call up another tight head prop. So that's what I expect to happen. And I expect it to be Finlay Beelam.
I can't think of another one to come in. Maybe if Dan Cole hadn't retired, who knows?
I'm sure if the call came, he'd be on the plane.
he'd come back, just wheel himself back for one last tour.
Yeah, everyone's just sat around the table down in Australia and go, "Can you hear the Undertaker music?"
Yeah. Who's starting loosehead then out of yours?
It will be Andrew Porter. It will be Andrew Porter. He's a player who, if fit, every coach is picking him. I'm saying that based on what we've seen coaches do.
Yeah.
Obviously, that a lot of people were talking about Nicky Smith as being an option to go, and I was arguing that you don't need Smith and Porter, because they're two players who are looking to, how do I put this, win a penalty at the scrum without necessarily having to go forwards.
Yeah.
So if one of them gets on the wrong side of a referee, you substitute it on, you're gonna have the same problem.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that having Porter and not Smith, but I expect Porter to be the starter.
I think he'll get picked because he's Irish. I'd prefer to see Schumann or whatever the Scottish way of saying it is starts.
Yeah.
I think Porter's, as you said, he's got the dark arts perfectly nailed. I just don't know what else he adds around the park at times. I think he goes, I don't see enough of him during games, whereas Schoeman comes on, causes a lot of issues at Edinburgh the other week against the Bulls and stuff like that. He's here, there, everywhere around the pitch as well. I think you can't just pick him solely on the scrummaging. From what I see of Porter, I don't see much else. I see a lot of errors potentially out of his game, but because of how big he is, he probably creates enough of an impact for people to still have to pick him. So, yeah, be interesting to see how that goes. Obviously, with the Irish contingent picking the teams. Second row then: Ty Byrne, Ollie Chesham, Scott Cummins, Maro Itoje, Joe McCarthy, James Ryan. Well, obviously Maro Itoje is going to be picked there.
Yep.
So we've got Ty Burn, Chesham, Cummins, Joe McCarthy, and James Ryan. If you ask me leading up to the Six Nations, Joe McCarthy was probably one of the most exciting locks around. Now he's sort of fell out of favour.
He got stepped in a phone box by Scarlett's Alex Craig on the weekend.
Yeah, I think he sort of dropped off a little bit, the lad, and I'm surprised he's there in that form. Scott Cummins, is that just... I don't know what he adds. Fair play to Ollie Chesham for getting a call up, though, because...
I wonder if Ollie Chesham might be... I think he is a lock 6 hybrid, because we'll get onto the back row in a minute, but it's all 7s. It's 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Whereas Chesham is very able of playing in at 6. Chesham's also the tallest man on tour, I'm led to believe. So I expect Chesham to definitely be involved in the match day 23. I think in the build up to it, everyone was saying, second row is Maritoji Tyburn. Nailed on. And I'm not sure what's changed to mean that people are no longer... Tyburn's just not the flavour of the month anymore. It's interesting. And I wonder if there's a bit... We'll get onto another player who's kind of having this at the moment. Just people are just kind of more excited about other people. And has a narrative grown that Tyburn's playing badly when he actually isn't? He's playing for a Munster side that's not great. Playing for an Ireland side that's dipped a little bit. Does that therefore mean that Tyburn's dipped? And I'm not sure if it does. No. But some people want Tyburn at 6, which again is an option. Yeah. So for me, I'd probably still go Burn. I might, but I've ummed and ahed on it. You might go... I can see him going James Ryan, but that doesn't excite me as a selection.
I think James Ryan probably complements the Mario Toji selection. I think they would work very well together around the breakdown, and carrying will work pretty well, them two together. So yeah, that'd be a really interesting mix. Ollie Chesham, as you say, will be there or thereabouts. He seems to manage it for England, and he's still only 24, which is just mad. He looks so old. I thought I looked old, but like Ollie Chesham's like he's looking an old boy at early doors already. So fair play to him. But be good to see Joe McCarthy and Chesham in one of the midweek tours playing together on in that second row as well. That'd be a really interesting mix to see how people, because Joe McCarthy's not a small lad either, is he?
Oh no.
So that'd be a really interesting one to see. But yeah, I think it's going to be James Ryan, Itoje. I think that's the perfect mix, leaving the option for Burn to slot in the back row if required, depending on the ones.
You have to bear in mind as well that it's probably in at least one test going to be a 6-2 split. So I would imagine one out-and-out lock, one lock 6 hybrid, and one 7 on the bench is what that'll turn into.
And then you've got Ben Earl who can play 12 as well. So.
He actually was by the end of the Six Nations as well.
He did. Yeah, he did. It's coming. What Eddie Jones called however many years ago is finally coming true. Jack Noel playing flanker or whatever again.
Yeah.
The back row then, we've got Jack Conan, Tom Curry, Ben Earl, Jack Morgan, Henry Pollock, Josh van der Fleer. Let's discuss.
Only 1-8. That's the main thing. So it's Jack Conan or nothing. And if it turns out to be Ben Earl, I make no secret of the fact I think Ben Earl is a open side flanker cosplaying as an 8. He's a 7 for me. So what we're probably going to see in at least one test is dual open sides, which is interesting because Henry Pollock's the same. Is he? I think based on what I've seen, he seems to be a 7 more than an 8. If they do go dual open sides, how that's going to work against Joe Schmidt, who's the breakdown is his speciality. And then it comes the question of the line out, because you're lacking in line out jumpers there. Now, Tom Curry ended up jumping for line outs for England in the Six Nations, and it went okay. But it was... So this is a kind of stat that I was looking at lately, is that we're seeing more lineouts in the game now than we ever have. I think there was something like 80 more lineouts in the Six Nations this year than last year. But lineout steals halved. They went from 25 odd 10 years ago to now a dozen across the whole Six Nations. So like less than one lineout steal a game on average.
But did that include the penalties against? So they didn't even have to steal if they challenged.
I'm talking pure steals,
actual robberies. Yeah.
Yeah. So which is interesting because the lineouts are becoming more important. There's more of them, but lineout steals are going down, which is the opposite of what you think. Because you think that everyone would know that lineouts are really important, so everyone would try and steal them more. And the club size that we're seeing around that steal a lot of lineout ball tend to be the ones that are doing quite well at the moment. So it's bizarre. And Ireland, I know it's the Scotland forwards coach who's been picked as the forwards coach for the Lions, which is I suspect had a big hand in Scott Cummins getting picked.
Yeah.
Which says how much stock he's got in the bank because he didn't play in the Six Nations. But Ireland just threw everything to the front in the Six Nations. It was front, win the ball, win the ball, win the ball. And all of the Six Nations teams really were quite front heavy. Whereas if you look down in Super Rugby with the Australian sides at the moment, they're very willing to go to the back and the middle.
Yeah.
So I just wonder whether the line out is something that they've sacrificed a little bit. They've just gone, let's get some safe ball off the front, off one or two genuine line out options in the pack, and then to create opportunities from otherwhere, which I think is very safe. Very safe.
Yeah, well, obviously, Itoji's going to be one of them going up easy, isn't he? So he's going to be there or thereabouts.
Is he going to be the caller, though? Because a lot of teams don't like having the captain and the line-out caller being the same guy.
Well, if you're playing it safe, they want their best jumper, surely. And like as you said, easy anyone there apart from potentially Chesham at times, but he's got a mistake. Joe McCarthy before the Six Nations would have been. He seemed to catch everything. I think Itoji leads the line and leads as captain. I think in the test. I think that's how they're going to guide it forward. It's sort of up the jumper, get the platform, and try and let the backs play a little bit, maybe, or try and get it out into the back row and expect. Maybe they're expecting the back row to run a little bit more. Want the likes of Ben Earl, Tom Curry, Jack Morgan, Pollock, all of these guys to actually carry more, rather than having to worry about the breakdown all the time. Leave that, ice it, let's just try and keep going. And when Van der Fleer comes on, he can carry as well and also cause carnage at the breakdown when he gets the opportunity, or leave that job to the locks and then sort of try and put them in as the first option to carry the ball through. There must be a game plan to it. As you said, you can't keep playing a safe line out without another option on the outside of it. Maybe they've got a trick play where it's going to come down and they're going to run through the middle or something like that. They've been watching too much YouTube. Maybe.
But I think if I've noticed this, Joe Schmidt's noticed it, and he knows a lot more about rugby than I do.
Yeah, be interesting. Right, I think before we move on to the backs, let's pick the starting test forward pack.
Okay.
So for me, Sheenan to start at hooker. I think we're going to have to probably go based on the names that are there and injuries. It's going to have to be Will Stewart at tight heads. And then for me, Schoeman to start. We're then going to have Itoji and Ryan. At 8, I can't look past Conan. And then I think we're going to see Van der Fleer and Ben Earl probably starting, and probably Van der Fleer pushed to 6 and Earl on 7.
That'll be interesting because Van der Fleer has never worn the number 6 in his career.
I don't think you can miss out unless he doesn't start him and Jack Morgan gets put in and they go completely, and then Van der Fleer comes off the bench.
If you go Earl and Jack Morgan, that's a small back row. So that when I was saying about Dewey Lake walked past me, the thing about, I think this tour is going to be the furthest that Dewey Lake and Jack Morgan have ever been away from each other. They are like joined at the hip, and
maybe Dewey's actually flying with him. He's just
well, like when one's injured, the other one's injured. It's amazing, but when Derry Lake walked past me, Jack Morgan walked past me not long after. And whatever size that you think Jack Morgan is 80% of that. If you look up his size on the internet, it's not that. He's a small guy. So if you're talking Ben Earl and Jack Morgan as your flankers, that is a small flank pairing. And I know they pack a punch. I know they're very active around the pitch and things, but height, if nothing else, is an advantage at times. And I think having both, I know Conan's a big man, but then if you've got a second row pairing of Itoje and Tyke Byrne, for instance, they're not particularly big for locks either. I know compared to normal mortal human beings, they're massive. Yeah. But for international locks, they're not especially big. So a small back five, and you'd think that like a natural advantage the Lions should have over Australia would be a beefy pack. So maybe that's just playing into stereotypes. But so I for me, I'd go a hybrid at 6. So I'd probably go Itoje, Byrne, Chesham at 6. And then, because I'm biased, I'll go Jack Morgan at 7. And then Conan at 8, because there's nobody else.
Front row?
If he's fit, Xander Fagerson. And then Dan Sheehan, head and shoulders. And then Porter to start, and then Genge off the bench.
Yeah, good shout. It'd be interesting, because as you say, you're either going to go for a mobile back five and try and win as much as you can around, run the Aussies off the park.
Well, I think the Aussies would love that, though. I think that's what they're all about.
You've either got to play them at the same game and just try and do that and make sure you're quicker than them, which is going to be hard to start with. Like as you said, though, a year ago this was nailed on. It was an easy win for the Lions. Like the Aussies were dog shit, weren't they? And now this has probably become a very
Wales played them into form.
Yeah, then, as always. Well, you're probably about to start Japan's revival as well in World Rugby as well. So. But right, I think yeah, it's they must have a plan, and that's why we're not picking the Lions tour. So it could. So who's going to get the ball out of this the scrum or breakdown? So we've got the option of Jamison Gibson Park, Alex Mitchell, and Thomas Williams.
This seems to be the jersey that's dividing opinion the most, because I think there was 4 contenders. Well, obviously there's 4 nations, and each one had a clear contender. And everyone that I spoke to had a different 3 out of the 4. There seems to be a bit like I've spoken about other players. There seems to be a bit of a narrative building that Jameson Gibson Park is playing badly, or that his form's dipped, or he was never that good in the first place.
Oh, come off it! Like he is very good. Like I think there's an element of he's not as amazing as everyone, but he is very, very good, and he pulls the strings of that Irish side. He's at Leinster, isn't he? So that's not his fault that they can't win anything. That's just the Leinster way. They are the bridesmaid to everything now, aren't they? They just can't win nothing. It's simple as that. So I think Alex Mitchell is more exciting off the bench. I don't see enough of Thomas Williams to probably call it any other, but I think he's a similar ilk, very sort of Danny Care-esque from what I've seen, very quick around a breakdown and sort of front foot forward. Is that a fair assessment of him? Or
so he's just been named Premiership Player of the Season, which is quite funny because I don't think he was any better for Gloucester than he was for Cardiff. I just think the shape of the Premiership suited him. I did a deep dive on Scrum-Half stats during the Six Nations, and it was fascinating to me that Jameson Gibson Park, if you plot it on like a spider graph, Jameson Gibson Park's graph and Thomas Williams' graph were exactly the same shape. They share very similar strengths. Now, they're not the same player. I think probably Gibson Park's kicking is better, although interesting, Ireland primarily kick off 10, which is interesting. But I think Thomas Williams is probably... and Gibson Park's defence is a lot better than Thomas Williams is. He's not a man for a one-on-one tackle, but we'll come on to that in bigger case in a second. I think Thomas Williams is better one-on-one, ball in hand, broken play. So a lot of people didn't think that Thomas Williams would go. It was never in doubt for me that he would go. I've got to be honest. I'm just going to be honest. I don't rate Alex Mitchell. I don't think he's very good at all. I think I would have taken Ben White over him. Now, I can see that Ben White maybe has got availability issues playing out in France in Toulon, and he's not first choice for his club side because Baptiste Serran is there.
Yeah.
But
not first choice for Scotland either at times.
Yeah, but I think he had a very good Six Nations, and Alex Mitchell, Bordeaux targeted him in the Champions Cup final, and they found him, and they got a lot of change out of him. Yeah. And the way he defends versus how Gibson Park defends, the way that Alex Mitchell defends is go on the wing, go in the backfield, and avoid making tackles at all costs. And we saw that against Ireland, James Lowe found him, and try time,
Turnstile.
Yeah, so for me, I wouldn't have taken Alex Mitchell. I'm just being honest. But I've been that wrong enough already. Then maybe he's in there. But like I said, I think Maxime Lucu showed him the levels in the Champions Cup final. So yeah, I'm not. If it was me, I would have Gibson Park starting and Thomas Williams off the bench.
Yeah, I think Gibson Park starts every day of the week there, and then it's just whether Alex Mitchell can stay fit. For me, I think there's always that worry of him getting a knock. It'd be exciting to see, because from the bits that I have seen of Thomas Williams, he's willing to take that chance and spot the gap, and it is exactly the same as Mitchell in my eyes, in that he's willing to take that opportunity. But it's the other bits around the park that we discussed about that might make that decision a little bit easier for them. So we agree Gibson Park then, yeah?
Yeah.
To start. Fly half. Finn Russell, Finn Smith, and then Marcus Smith.
I'm shocked that Marcus Smith is going. And I think that says a lot about what the other options were. I think Andy Farrell would have loved to have taken Sam Prendergast, but it's just been found that he's not ready.
No.
And for whatever reason, they don't like Jack Crowley. There was no option from Wales to take. There was no contender.
No.
So
I think there's too much noise around Jack Crowley potentially going to France as well. So I think he was kind of out of favour in Ireland at the time, and wasn't. But then obviously he goes and does what he does again for Munster and stuff. And
I think England looks so much better since Finn Smith has come into 10 than they ever looked with Marcus. I think he's already in 3 tests done a better job in the 10 jersey than Marcus Smith ever did for England. Marcus Smith was always about the Marcus Smith show, whereas Finn Smith is all about the England show, and I think that works for them. If we see Marcus Smith in the 15 jersey for the Lions, we're in trouble. He's not a fullback. He's not a fullback any day of the week. If you go back and you watch England versus Italy at Twickenham, the Six Nations, in the first half, Italy puts 3 high balls up on him in a row, and he loses all 3. And then he got defensively he doesn't know how to set his feet when he's the last defender. He always gets in the wrong positions. He gets his body angle wrong. He's on his heels.
I'll give him his due. His tackling has improved, because there was a time that he was just a turnstile. He was on par with Ramos. Ramos is literally at 10 a human turnstile, but can kick forever. So it's easy for him to be picked for France. But I'll give Marcus Smith his due. What he has improved a lot in what was lacking. I agree. He's not a fullback. He has that X factor that just, I think, in a tiring game opens up so many opportunities, which works really well with Finn Smith starting the game, because he's bigger than obviously Marcus Smith as well, and he can carry himself a little bit more. And then the broken field potentially opens the door, but you've then got the wizard that is Finn Russell.
Yeah. Finn Russell's another player where kind of a narrative started going around that he was playing badly, and he wasn't. He's not playing badly at all. And he's about to guide Bath to the Premiership title.
Yeah.
And he's been Scotland's pretty much best player for however long. So for me, it's Finn Russell all day long.
I agree. It depends on the game for me. So I think whether he starts Finn Russell and then brings Finn Smith on, or whether Finn Smith starts and then Finn Russell comes on. I think it depends on what gameplay they want to go, and potentially how maybe the games in the lead up have gone with that formation, I think. So, but I'd say probably first test is going to be Finn Russell.
Yeah.
As well. Outside then, well, yeah, so centres. We've got Bundy Aki, Huw Jones, Gary Ringrose, Sion Tui Pelotu. Yeah, that's it. We got the four centres: Aki, Jones, Ringrose, and Tui Pelotu.
So I'm a student of the school of thought that is you pick centres as a partnership, not individually.
Yeah.
So you've got an Irish partnership there, you've got a Scottish partnership there. Now, the Scottish partnership has had availability issues. Huw Jones is currently injured. Sione Tuipulotu is only just back from injury.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think right now, as we speak here now, today in June 2025, I think the Scotland duo is better. I think now I love Bundy Aki, and if you can have Bundy Aki off the bench, I'm here all day for that. He's my favourite Ireland player by a long way. But I think Tuipulotu and Huw Jones are the premium centre partnership in Britain and Ireland at the moment. And if you go in Finn Russell ahead of them, it makes your decision even easier.
Based on partnerships,
yeah,
I completely agree. But I would love to see Bundy Aki and Huw Jones as a partnership and just see how that can catch fire. Ringrose has never reached the potential that he could or should have been at. I thought he was going to come on the scene and just blow it apart. He hasn't reached that. I think he's lucky to have made it on this Lions tour, potentially. I think that's been based on partnerships rather than probably performance there.
Yeah, and it's funny that Robbie Henshaw hasn't made it, and he can play 12 and 13. And if you think if you're only taking 4, do you not need a man who can... I know Bundy Aki can as well, but why not have that extra security blanket? And is Gary Ringrose that much better than Robbie Henshaw?
Not on recent form. And then don't forget, you've got Elliot Daly, who can literally is the Swiss Army knife of rugby, who can play pretty much everywhere. So for me, I'd love to see Bundy Aki and Huw Jones start that first test together. But
that's the one to watch in the build-up games. What combinations are playing to get each other in the centres? Because if we start seeing on the Saturday games, there's a partnership that keeps getting picked together. That's your test partnership.
Yeah, agreed. We've then got on the wing. We've got Tommy Freeman, Mac Hansen, James Lowe, and Duan van der Merwe.
It will be James Lowe. He's not fast, but his left boot is cheat code. Every time one of my teams plays against him, I'm like, what the heck do you do about this boot that he's got? He's just going to turn you all day long. And that's going to be a vital part of the Lions game plan. On the other wing, now Duan van der Merwe is a left wing, as James Lowe is. So do you say, we're not going to move him over?
I think on current form, you can't look past Tommy Freeman.
I agree. That's where I was going to. I think James Lowe and Tommy Freeman are the two.
Mac Hansen as well. Exciting, but...
injured, out of form.
I think Tommy Freeman and Van der Merwe start.
That's a more exciting partnership to pair of wingers, to be honest. That's one where if you're Australia, because when James Lowe gets the ball in his own half, if you're Australia, you're like, let's go back and cover the kick. He's not right. He's even up to the 10-meter line. Whereas if one of those two gets the ball, you're like, you're on your heels, you're on the back foot. You're thinking, okay, where's my inside man? Where's my outside man? What do I need to do? Because he could take me on here. James Lowe ain't going to do that.
No. And also, if I ever pick him in my dream team, he ain't getting any points. So he's always done me a dirty. So I think I've probably got more of a vendetta against him than actually his ability. I think it's because he's done me so many dirty times on fantasy rugby. Fullback then, Elliot Daly, Hugh Keenan, or Blair Kinghorn?
Can't be Elliot Daly. Come on, in 2025. If he's fit, because he's currently injured as well, Blair Kinghorn all day long.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I was about to say he is currently with his leg up in the air, wasn't he? So
yeah,
So we've gone all the way from Sheehan. You've called for Fagerson and Porter. You've gone Tygburn, Atoji, and Chesham, with Jack Morgan on one side and Jack Conan at 8. Gibson Park at 9. Finn Russell at 10. You were going for the Scottish partnership for starting, weren't you?
Yeah.
For centres. So Hugh Jones and Tuipulotu. Freeman on one side. James Lowe on the other. And Blair Kinghorn for your starting Lions test.
Quite Scottish heavy, especially in the backs.
Wow. That's the thing. They have been probably the most exciting at times. Apart from it when England turned it on in a couple of little bits. I think the most consistent back line has been the Scottish back line there. I think Blair Kinghorn's probably also a good shoe-in to be able to dot in at 10 if needed. He's so versatile as well, and he's literally another better version of Elliot Daly, to be fair. But he's I'm just looking through the list again. There's only 10 players that have been previously capped by the Lions on this tour.
That's supposedly one of the big theories about why Elliot Daly's gone, because I don't think anyone could argue that Elliot Daly's in the top 10 back three players in Britain and Ireland at the moment. But he's been a Lions player. This is his third tour? Fourth tour?
Fifth cap. He's got 5 caps. So, yeah, third
He's
tour. Probably been around on third tour, yeah. So, Van der Merwe's had 3 caps. Bundiaki's had 1. Finn Russell's had 1. Tom Curry's had 3. Conan's had 3. Toji's had 6. Tyburn's had 2. Furlong's had 6. And Cowan Dickey's had 3. So, they've tried to pick one previously capped Lion in every position by the looks of it. Apart from fly half.
Yeah, so
sorry,
I think
scrum half, not fly half, sorry.
In the backs there is a lack of Lions experience. Although I don't know how someone would have to tell me how much is Lions experience really important? Because it's a team that's
every 4 years.
Yeah, it's a team that's never played together anyway.
No.
And what is it that I'd love someone to tell me, what is it that you need to know? Is it just the playing a game every 3 or 4 days that you need some experience of that? Is it just characters? You need to be able to bond. You can't afford to have players fall out. You can't afford to not have the group gel. So you need someone in there to be the WD-40 socially. I don't know. I just don't know. But that's supposedly why Elliot Daly has been picked, is because there's a lack of Lions experience elsewhere. Although, Lee Halfpenny's an experienced Lion. He's not going. But of course you wouldn't pick him because he's not in the form that deserves to go. But is Elliot Daly really?
Again, Six Nations wasn't too bad, was it? I think again, I think it's probably his versatility he's taken him once again. He can play in multiple positions and provide injury cover, and he adds that element of previous tour experience. That would be interesting to see how many of these actually make it to the first test as well, whether any injuries arise or players have to drop out. I think we're going to have to talk about the Henry Pollock and Jack Morgan inclusion as well, and the effect for 2 very young players. Jack Morgan probably going to be another Sergio Parise style player. Obviously,
I've heard that before. When someone first said that to me, he's like, Jack Morgan's your Sergio Parise. I was like, that's where we are, is it? But no, he's been in unbelievable form for 3 years now.
He had that injury that sort of had the blip on his in the middle, didn't he?
But he's fully deserving on going. Fully deserving on going. And then you've got, with Henry Pollock, is a bit of an unknown. It's a bit of an unknown, isn't it? Is it that... Because it's funny, if you look back on Lions tours, if you look back on Lions test teams, you'll see players in there and you go, bloody hell, he hasn't done anything before or since.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that's what Pollock is going to do, but it could be that it's like the ultimate flash in the pan. It could be that. We don't know yet. I'm not saying that that's what I want to happen. We'll just have to see how he goes on the tour games, because he's going to be playing against the Australians in the bin juice games.
Yeah,
a style that suits him. So he's 100% getting a 50-60 meter run in try at some point.
Yeah,
Like he's definitely scoring tries on the tour. So is he just going to put together form that's unassailable and you have to play him?
I think Jack Morgan's probably bin juice captain for me. I don't think he can not be included in that sort of level. I think he gets onto the bench at a bare minimum in the tests, and I think the Henry Pollock effect continues, mate. I think the excitement around him within the media as well will also potentially carry him into test inclusion.
Yeah.
He's an extremely talented lad, but he can't be put at 8 again, especially in a Champions Cup final. Poor lads trying against that Bordeaux team. And I think the Aussies will find him out pretty quickly if they have that opportunity at 8. Go on in. We'll finish on the note of what is the test scores going to be? What are we going to win by?
You've planted in my head now that the second test is obviously the massive one in the 100,000 seater, and it could be a test. Well, it's absolutely got because of the nature of a 3-test tour. The second test is a decider, at least in the medium term. I think the Lions win the first test by 12. I think they win the second test by 3. And then I think they lose the third test because the series will be safe and so they'll rotate.
Oh, I think we've got a repeat of New Zealand coming on. I think we've got the first win, a defeat at the MCG by 3, I reckon. We lose by 3. And I think we draw the last.
Oof.
I think that MCG crowd's just going to be too much.
It's clever scheduling, isn't it, from the schedulers to put the most important game, which is the second game, in the biggest stadium.
I think we lose that by a very narrow margin. I think the crowd's going to be too much for that. I think the first test we should be solid, and then I think I don't know. I've just got a feeling it's going to be 1-1-1. That's
that would be a
for you.
for the books, wouldn't it? I tell you what, if it is that, and maybe this just like to kind of close on this point. The Lions feels like it falls between two stools for me, because I feel like you've got this whole. It's supposed to be the pinnacle of like the best of the best of the best, and therefore winning is everything. But then it's also got this throwback amateur thing about it as well, and it's like, well, which is it then? It can't be both.
Mm.
And then you've got this thing of you're touring the same 3 nations over and over again, and you're playing against club sides. That's not how you prove you're the best in the world. So I just feel like the Lions doesn't have a set. This is what the Lions is, other than just making a load of dosh for whatever country hosts the tour.
That's a bombshell to end on there, Huw. For everyone that hasn't already started following you, mate, for more bombshells like that, where can they find you?
HG Rugby anywhere, Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, and most importantly, YouTube. Also podcasts as well. Just H, letter H, G, letter G for Huw Griffin and Rugby. That's where you can find me.
Huw, been a pleasure, mate, as always. Great to catch up with you about rugby as always. And for everyone that has joined us and enjoyed it, please make sure you like, follow, comment, subscribe, join our pod, join Huw's pod. There's plenty more rugby to come around. There's plenty more to watch. Thank you and goodbye.